Yellowstone National Park is one of the most studied geological sites on Earth. Over 4 million visitors each year. Hundreds of scientists monitoring volcanic activity, wildlife populations, and geothermal systems. Satellite imaging updates every 6 hours. Ground sensors track seismic movement in real time. You'd think we know everything about this place. We don't. There are areas in Yellowstone where reality behaves differently. Not folklore, not tourist stories. Documented phenomena that park rangers encounter, scientists can't explain, and the National Park Service has quietly restricted access to without public explanation. These aren't legends. They're case files. Reports submitted by credible professionals who encountered something impossible, and then, in some cases, refused to ever return. Lock your doors, put your headphones on, because after this, you'll never see Yellowstone the same way again. In the summer of 2018, a ranger named Marcus Webb was conducting a routine patrol near the Fairy Falls Trail, a moderate, 5-mile hike popular with families. It was mid-afternoon, clear skies, good visibility. He radioed in his position at 2:47 p.m., standard protocol. At 3:12 p.m., dispatch tried to contact him for a scheduled check-in. No response. They tried again at 3:20 p.m., 3:35 p.m., 4 o'clock p.m. Silence. A search team was deployed at 4:30 p.m. They found Webb at 5:15 p.m., sitting on a boulder approximately 400 meters off the trail. He was disoriented, couldn't explain how he'd gotten there, and insisted he'd only been gone for 10 minutes. His radio was functioning. His watch showed the correct time. But when they reviewed the GPS data from his park-issued tracker, it showed something impossible. Between 2:47 p.m. and 5:15 p.m., his position formed a perfect circle, 400 meters in diameter, repeated 17 times. Webb was medically evaluated. No head trauma, no signs of intoxication, no psychological episode. He remembered leaving the trail to investigate what he described as a low hum, like machinery running underground. He followed the sound for what felt like a few minutes. When he looked up, the trail was gone. He tried to backtrack, but the landscape didn't match. Trees were in different positions. The creek he'd crossed was suddenly on his left instead of his right. He sat down to wait for help, assuming he'd gotten disoriented. He had no idea 2.5 hours had passed. The Park Service filed an internal report. It was marked equipment malfunction and archived. Webb requested a transfer to a different park 6 months later. When asked why, he told a colleague, "I know what I felt, and the first I'm not going back there to feel it again." What makes this disturbing is that Webb's case isn't isolated. Between 2015 and 2022, the National Park Service documented 14 similar incidents in Yellowstone. Rangers and hikers reporting missing time, GPS tracks showing impossible movement patterns, and a consistent description of a low-frequency hum preceding the disorientation. None of these cases were made public. They exist only in internal Park Service records, obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request filed by a journalist in 2023. Here's the second thing at 23. There's a location in the park called the Silent Zone, though you won't find it on any official map. It's a roughly circular area, approximately 1.2 kilometers in diameter, located north of the Norris Geyser Basin. The zone has no official designation, no signage, no marked boundaries, but every ranger who's worked in Yellowstone for more than 5 years knows exactly where it is and what happens if you enter it. Dr. Rebecca Ullman, a geophysicist from Montana State University, visited the Silent Zone in 2016 as part of a study on geothermal acoustic emissions. She brought a team of 3 researchers and a full array of recording equipment, professional-grade microphones, seismographs, and electromagnetic field detectors. The plan was to spend 6 hours mapping sound patterns across the geothermal area, comparing ambient noise levels to volcanic activity. They entered the zone at 9 o'clock a.m. Within 15 minutes, every piece of electronic equipment stopped working. Not depleted batteries, complete failure. Digital recorders froze mid-recording. The seismograph display went dark. Even their phones, which had been in airplane mode, showed corrupted operating systems when they tried to restart them later. But the most disturbing part wasn't the equipment. It was the silence. Dr. Ullman described it in her field notes, which were later shared with colleagues, but never officially published. It wasn't the absence of sound, it was the presence of nothing. No wind, no birds, no insect noise. The air felt heavy, like it was pressing against my eardrums. One of my team members started crying. She didn't know why. We left after 20 minutes. When they exited the zone, sound returned gradually. First, wind, then distant bird calls. By the time they were 200 meters away, the environment felt normal again. They tried to return the next day with fresh equipment. The same thing happened. Everything failed. The silence returned. They abandoned the study and submitted a report to the Park Service, recommending the area be restricted pending further investigation. The report was received, acknowledged, and filed. No restriction was ever put in place. The silent zone remains unmarked. A retired park ranger interviewed anonymously in 2021 said this about the area: "We don't patrol it, we don't send people there. If someone asks about it, we tell them it's geologically unstable," which is true, but not the reason we avoid it. The reason is that everyone who spends more than 30 minutes in that zone leaves different. What does different mean? He wouldn't elaborate. When pressed, he said, "Ask the researchers who keep trying to study it. Ask them if they went back." Here's the third thing. In October 2019, a wildlife biologist named Dr. Ethan Cross was conducting a wolf population survey in the Lamar Valley, a remote region in the northern section of the park. He was using a drone equipped with thermal imaging to track pack movements across difficult terrain. At 4:17 p.m., the drone's camera captured something that shouldn't exist. The thermal image showed a heat signature approximately 40 meters long and 8 meters wide, moving through a densely forested area where no road or trail existed. The shape was consistent with a vehicle, a large one, moving at a steady speed of about 15 kilometers per hour. But there was no road, no tire tracks, no sound, just the heat signature, gliding through the forest like it was on pavement. Dr. Cross repositioned the drone to get a visual confirmation. When the standard camera focused on the location, there was nothing there. Trees, underbrush, no vehicle, no disturbance. He switched back to thermal. The signature was still there. Still moving. He recorded 11 minutes of footage before the drone's battery forced him to land it. He submitted the footage to the Park Service, along with a request to investigate the area on foot. The request was denied. The official reason given was potential danger from active grizzly bear presence. Dr. Cross pointed out that his survey had documented no grizzly activity in that area for weeks. The denial stood. He was advised to disregard the thermal anomaly as a sensor error. The problem is, thermal imaging doesn't produce 11 minutes of continuous sensor error. It either works or it doesn't. And if it was malfunctioning, why did the visual camera show the correct terrain? Dr. Cross sent the footage to a colleague at the University of Wyoming, who specializes in thermal imaging analysis. The colleague confirmed the signature was consistent with a large vehicle or machinery. He also noted that the heat distribution suggested an active engine, not residual warmth from the sun or geothermal activity. When Dr. Cross tried to access the area again in 2020, he found that it had been quietly designated as a restricted research zone. No public explanation, no signage, just a note in the internal Park Service database indicating that the area was off-limits pending geological assessment. That assessment has been pending for 4 years. The footage exists. The heat signature was real. No one is allowed to investigate why. Here's the fourth thing. Yellowstone has over 10,000 geothermal features, geysers, hot springs, mud pots. They're monitored constantly because they're directly linked to the volcanic system beneath the park. But there's one feature that doesn't fit the pattern. It's called the breathing vent, and it shouldn't exist. The breathing vent is located in an area west of the Old Faithful complex. It's not marked on tourist maps, but it's known to geologists who study the park. The feature is a small opening in the ground, roughly 2 meters in diameter, that releases bursts of steam at irregular intervals. What makes it strange is the sound. Every time steam is released, the vent produces an audible exhalation, a deep, resonant sound that resembles breathing. Dr. Paul Henderson, a volcanologist from the University of Utah, studied the breathing vent in 2017. He installed acoustic monitoring equipment to analyze the sound patterns. What he found didn't match any known geothermal phenomenon. The exhalation occurred at intervals ranging from 30 seconds to 5 minutes, with no correlation to seismic activity, air pressure, or temperature changes. It was irregular, almost random, except for one detail. The intervals followed a pattern consistent with biological respiration. Inhale, pause, exhale, inhale, pause, exhale, inhale, pause, exhale. Henderson submitted his findings to the Journal of Volcanology and Geothermal Research. The paper was rejected. Reviewers stated that the sound pattern was likely coincidental and that biological interpretation of geothermal activity was not appropriate for scientific publication. He tried to return to the site in 2018 to gather more data. His permit was denied. The reason given was ongoing research by Park Service geologists. When he inquired about that research, he was told it was classified as internal monitoring and not available for public collaboration. A former Park Service geologist who worked in Yellowstone from 2010 to 2019 confirmed that the breathing vent was studied internally. In an interview conducted on condition of anonymity, he stated, "We recorded it for 3 months. The sound is real. The pattern is consistent. We don't know what causes it. And we were told to stop investigating. Why?" He didn't have an answer. But he did say this: "When something doesn't fit the model, you have 2 choices: expand the model or bury the data." Guess which one is easier? Here's the 5th thing. Yellowstone has a well-documented history of people disappearing. According to the National Park Service, over 300 people have vanished in the park since it was established in 1872. Most are found. Some are never seen again. But there's a subset of cases that follow a pattern officials don't discuss publicly. Between 2008 and 2021, 7 people disappeared while hiking alone in areas near the park's eastern boundary. All 7 were experienced hikers. All 7 had GPS devices. All 7 were found within 48 hours, alive, disoriented, with no memory of where they'd been. And all 7 had the same physical marker. Their watches had stopped at the exact moment they reported feeling strange. A word every single one of them used independently. One of those hikers was a man named Colin Dreyer, a 34-year-old software engineer from Colorado. He went missing on a day hike near the Thoroughfare Trail in August 2015. Search and rescue found him 22 hours later, sitting beside a creek 6 kilometers from where he'd last been seen. He couldn't explain how he'd gotten there. His GPS showed no movement after 2:13 p.m. His watch had stopped at 2:13 p.m. He insisted it was still mid-afternoon when rescuers found him, even though it was nearly midnight. Medical evaluation showed nothing wrong. No dehydration, no exposure, no signs of distress. But when researchers examined his watch, they found something odd. The internal mechanism hadn't stopped due to damage or battery failure. It had simply ceased functioning, as if time itself had paused. A horologist who examined it later stated, "Mechanical watches don't just stop unless something physically prevents the gears from moving." This watch had no obstruction, no damage, no explanation. Dreyer was interviewed by a Park Service psychologist. The interview transcript, obtained through FOIA, includes a statement that was never made public. "I remember walking. Then the first remember sitting. Nothing in between. But the first know I walked somewhere. I can feel it, like muscle memory. My legs were tired, like I'd been hiking for hours. But the first have no idea where I went." 6 other people described the exact same experience. Missing time, stopped watches, muscle fatigue with no memory of exertion. The Park Service labeled these cases as disorientation due to altitude and dehydration, despite the fact that none of the individuals showed symptoms of either. The pattern was never investigated further. Here's the sixth thing. In 2020, a group of geologists from the University of Wyoming were conducting a study on subsurface volcanic activity. They were using ground-penetrating radar to map magma chambers beneath the park. The technology works by sending radio waves into the ground and measuring how they reflect back, creating a detailed image of what's below the surface. At a location near the Norris Geyser Basin, the radar detected something that didn't match any known geological formation. It was a hollow space, roughly 200 meters below ground, approximately 50 meters wide and 30 meters tall. The shape was too regular to be a natural cavity. The walls were smooth, almost symmetrical. It looked, according to the lead researcher, Dr. Lina Torino, like a room. Dr. Torino submitted a request to conduct a deeper survey using seismic tomography, a more advanced imaging technique. The request was denied by the Park Service. The reason given was risk of disturbing geothermal stability. She pointed out that seismic tomography is non-invasive and poses no risk to the environment. The denial stood to rest. She attempted to publish her initial findings in geophysical research letters. The paper was accepted, then pulled before publication. The journal's editor stated that additional peer review was necessary. That review has been ongoing for 4 years. The hollow space is still there. The data is documented. No one is allowed to investigate what it is. A colleague of Dr. Torino, who worked on the same project, described what happened after the denial. We were told, very politely, that some areas of Yellowstone are not open for academic inquiry. Not because they're dangerous, because they're administratively restricted. That's the phrase they used, administratively restricted. What does that even mean? Here's the seventh thing. There are sounds in Yellowstone that no one can explain. Not animal calls, not geothermal activity, not wind or falling rock. Sounds that have been recorded by visitors, rangers, and researchers, all describing the same phenomenon. A low-frequency hum, sometimes accompanied by rhythmic pulses, that seems to come from beneath the ground. In 2018, a tourist named Jennifer Pale was camping near the Shoshone Lake backcountry area. At approximately 3:00 a.m., she woke to a sound she described as a deep vibration, like a massive engine running underground. She recorded it on her phone. The recording captured 4 minutes of a low, oscillating hum, pulsing at regular intervals. She submitted the recording to the Park Service the next day, asking if there was any geothermal or seismic activity in the area that might explain it. The response she received was brief. "Thank you for your report. The sound you recorded is consistent with natural geothermal processes. No further action is required, except it wasn't consistent with geothermal processes." Dr. Michael Rowe, an acoustic engineer who later analyzed the recording independently, stated that the frequency and pulse pattern didn't match any known natural phenomena. Geothermal vents produce continuous hissing or roaring. Earthquakes create sharp, irregular sounds. This was rhythmic, sustained, and mechanical. If the first had to compare it to something, I'd say it sounds like industrial machinery. There's no industrial machinery in the Shoshone Lake backcountry. The area is designated wilderness. No roads, no buildings, no equipment. Just forest, water, and geothermal features that have been studied for over a century. Yet the sound was there, documented, dismissed. At least 6 other recordings of similar sounds exist, all from different locations within Yellowstone, all submitted to the Park Service between 2015 and 2022. None have been publicly investigated. All were classified as natural acoustic phenomena without further explanation. 7 things. 7 documented cases where credible people encountered phenomena that defy standard explanation. Missing time with GPS evidence. A zone where sound and electronics cease to function. Thermal signatures of vehicles in roadless wilderness. A geothermal vent that breathes. Disappearances with stopped watches and no memory. A hollow space underground that looks like a room. And sounds that resemble machinery in areas where no machinery exists. None of these are folklore. They're documented in Park Service files, academic research, and Freedom of Information requests, and none of them have been investigated to any meaningful conclusion. The data exists. The access is restricted. The explanations are insufficient. Dr. Ullman, the geophysicist who studied the Silent Zone, was asked in a 2023 interview whether she believed the Park Service was hiding something. Her answer was careful. "I don't think they're hiding a conspiracy. I think they're avoiding questions they don't know how to answer. And when institutions don't know the answer, they stop asking the question." Yellowstone is 2.2 million acres. Most of it is accessible. Most of it has been studied extensively. But there are zones, small, restricted, quietly monitored, where something happens that doesn't fit the model. And because it doesn't fit, it's been filed away, waiting for a time when someone decides it's worth investigating. Or when the phenomena escalate to the point where they can't be ignored. If you made it this far, thank you very much. Leave a like if any of these stories resonated with you. Tell us which one haunted you the most and which we should explore next. But remember, some trails aren't lost. They're waiting.